All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren, and I'd like to welcome you to the California State Railroad Museum. Thank you for joining our Career Day Home Learning Program with PORTS. This is something that I'm really excited about that I've wanted to do for a while. Because while the museum has been closed to the public mostly since March, we have some folks that have been working really hard behind the scenes to put together some digital interpretive programs and some exhibits. And I would like to take the next 30 to 40 minutes to spotlight the work that these people are doing and share with you some of the different roles and jobs that we have in California State Parks and also at a railroad museum. So I'm going to keep my mask on as I'm going to a couple different presenters today. You're going to hear from our museum director, our interpreter 2, our guide 1, and our museum curator. And again, my name's Lauren. I'm a park interpretive specialist, and we'll go ahead and get our career day started here. Actually, before we go, this program, I was hoping we'd have some high school or college students joining us. Please put the hand up if you are a high school or a college student. Okay, we have a couple there. Looks like we have 5 or 6. Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And could you please put the hand up if you have ever been an employee of California State Parks or a volunteer, if you've ever worked or volunteered for California State Parks. I see some of my coworkers there. Hi, everybody. Okay, looks like we have about 7. Thank you for joining us as well. Now that I have a little better idea who is with us, we are going to begin our little career day tour here. And starting off, hello there.
Hi.
Hi. Could you please tell us a little bit about your position and what you do here at the Railroad Museum?
Yeah, my name is Ty Smith, and I'm the museum director of the California State Railroad Museum in Old Sacramento State Historic Park. And there are a couple of answers to that question. We could spend all morning talking about all of the paperwork I do and all of the bureaucratic processes that I'm involved in, all of the Zoom meetings I have with people here at the museum, but also people in the larger department, because the California State Railroad Museum is part of California State Parks. And so there's a lot of sort of administrative bureaucratic things I find myself involved in. That's part of my job. I don't consider it part of my work. My work really is to, we're celebrating 40 years here of being the California State Railroad Museum. We opened in 1981. So my real work here at the California State Railroad Museum is allowing good people to do good work within the museum in their various positions. And then also ensuring that we're as successful in the next 40 years as we have been in the last 40 years. And in my opinion, the way that we do that is by making the museum into a laboratory of learning that is more than just field trips, but it actually students at every level working within the museum to create products and to learn by doing. It's also by being a museum without walls, getting outside of the walls of the museum and reaching people wherever they may be. And that includes, in a digital sense. And then also really making the museum not a place just for visitors, but being a place of real community. And I consider those things being the true kind of core of what I do here.
Thanks, Ty. And can you tell us a little bit about your path to get here? Maybe education or previous jobs that have set you up to be where you are here?
Well, my position here, my being here is really the product of a very unlikely course. I was a very accomplished juvenile delinquent in high school. It was going really well, but then you have to do something for a living and find your work in the world. And I didn't know really what that would be until I took my first college level history course. I stumbled into a course that was taught in a most unique way by a public historian and somebody who became my mentor and really helped me connect all of the dots. And he didn't teach just from a textbook. He taught really place-based education. We would meet at the parking lot of the local Grange building to learn about agrarian reform. And it really, sort of opened my mind. And so for a long time, all I ever wanted to do was teach. And specifically, I wanted to teach at the community college level. But they don't let you just do it just because you want to. You have to earn degrees and you have to go through this whole educational process. And you still have to eat and, have, lights on in your house and all of that in the meantime. And so I stumbled on, I worked in auto parts for a lot of years, but then I found a little ad in the corner of a local newspaper, and it said that I could get paid to talk. And this was quite an amazing thing for me, because all my life, all anyone ever did was tell me to shut up. And so here was my chance. And so I became a guide trainee, giving tours at a place called Hearst Castle, which is a California state park. And that led to my path within California State Parks. And I worked on a variety of projects. I was one of a handful of people who began distance learning for California State Parks through the PORTS program. So in 2005, all of this was just a dream. And now we're going on 16 years with that very successful program. And I've worked at Hearst Castle a couple of times in my career. I worked at the California State Capitol Museum. And then about 4 years ago, I landed here at the California State Railroad Museum. I don't teach full time, but I do teach as an adjunct at CSU Sacramento. And as much as possible, I like to use the museum as the classroom. And so we teach museums courses and exhibits courses, teaching a California history course, and really in the context of state parks and the museum here.
Well, Ty, can we do a little walk and talk?
Sure.
And maybe as we're walking, can you tell us, in the past 4 years, a project that you've worked on or something that you are excited that you've contributed here to the museum?
Yeah, we could point all over, but maybe we'll
Yeah.
come to the center and pivot a little bit.
All right.
And if you point that way, you'll see a refrigerator car, and the exhibit in and around that, I'm very proud of, not because it's something that I made or something that the team here made, but because we invited students to come in and learn by doing. And so that exhibit is fully the product of the work of a group of graduate students in the public history program at Sac State. And they were invited in. I turned them loose on the museum. I said, pick a category, pick a place, pick a topic, and then develop an exhibit out of it. And what they came up with out of that experience was Farm to Fork, a public history, which sought to give a longer, deeper history to Sacramento and its farm to fork heritage by explaining how that all came to be and how it was the rail was the way that the farm got to the fork. And then I'll point you to another thing. Here you have this massive statue sculpture group of the Chinese workers of building the Transcontinental Railroad. We have it here just on loan. It's sort of a safe place to stay until it gets installed as part of a larger monument. But its presence here speaks to a longer, deeper connection that we've developed with the Chinese railroad worker descendant community here in Sacramento. And what we want to do as much as possible at the museum is not me to tell people stories, but to provide space for communities and different people who have had different relationships with the kind of our collective railroad heritage to tell their own stories. And so later, I think you're going to even see the exhibit, the Chinese Railroad Worker Experience exhibit. And that really was a product of this interactive community involvement where we invited people in to tell their descendant stories and the stories about the people who actually built the Transcontinental Railroad, which is arguably the most transformative history that we have. It is more directly related to who we are as a people today than just about any other piece of California history.
Yeah, I'm excited to have Debbie joining us as well to be able to show that exhibit and some of the planning that went into that. Do you have any sneak peeks for us, Ty? Anything on the back burner, any projects that you are excited about that is coming up?
Coming up.
Yeah.
Well, we have been spending our downtime when we've had to close the doors to our community to spruce up the museum. But it's been a huge economic impact to us as well. And so we've really pivoted. But we really are committed in every way to being a museum without walls. And I mentioned earlier, it's important that we reach people where they are, not just simply wait for them to come and visit. And so all of our work over the last year really has been about taking things that are hidden away in different places in our storage facilities and documents that are filed away in folders and bringing those as much as possible to the light. And so we've invested in a lot of infrastructure like book scanners and large format scanners, and also taking 360-degree views of different objects, and then also making big plans for our lobby to be a place not only that welcomes our community, but then also displays more of what we have on exhibit. So all of that stuff, all of that work that we've done over the last year is really starting to see the light of day in various ways through online exhibits and student-led online exhibits. We have a lot of interns working on all those things. And so I'm really excited about releasing all of that into the world, and that's starting to happen right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ty. Last question before I go. You've given us a lot of tidbits, and I can tell you have a lot of excitement about so many things that you're working on. But what do you like about your job? What are some of your favorite bits of what you do?
Yeah. What I like most about my job is the work part of it. And what I mean by that is to say, there's all the stuff you have to do when you have a job. And then there's all the stuff you get to do. And for me, it's such a great privilege. I really see my role as an enabler, my real work at this place is to create space for really talented people to put their passion to work in the world. And so anytime I'm able to empower people, to give people a chance to create an exhibit or to create a program, that brings me the most joy. It's none of the paperwork stuff. It's all of the, this is an amazing experiment, an amazing laboratory of learning, and just turning people with good ideas loose on it to make it successful.
Thank you so much, Ty. Thank you for turning me loose and letting me do some ports programs.
Yeah,
it's been a whole lot of fun, and I appreciate you coming into the museum to do this.
My pleasure. Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we are going to make our way here over to our next presenter. And Ty talked about some developments of new exhibits. And this is a person you want to hear from about that. So
Hey,
I would like to, hello, Kim. I'd like to introduce you to Kim Whitfield.
Hi, Lauren. Everybody in the ports world out there in the digital landscape, welcome. I'm Kim Whitfield, and I'm the Park Interpreter 2 here at the California State Railroad Museum. And my job is to work with my team to develop, design, and install new exhibits, but also to design, develop, and implement new interpretive programs and existing interpretive programs.
Nice. And can you tell us, are we doing a little walk as we
let's
go
walk
down the
inside.
cab forward?
We're gonna
I
go
love
down and look
this.
at one of our newest exhibits.
Awesome. So Kim, as our interpreter 2, can you tell us if you've done anything with parks or other positions or school-wise that led you into this position?
Yeah, so I have been with California State Parks for 3 years and a couple of months now. And I started in visitor services here as a seasonal employee, working with Jason Rankins, our guide supervisor, welcoming school groups to the museum and doing graphics design projects. I actually started my education in graphics design and then moved through art and anthropology and then into museum studies when I was an undergraduate at Chico State. After Chico, I went to John F. Kennedy University, where I earned a dual degree, MA, MBA in museum studies, and worked on exhibits. I worked at a bunch of small museums, including the San Francisco Museum and Historical Society when it was at the Mint, the Mendocino County Museum, the Lane L. Smith Museum of Anthropology, and I did actually also work at Manetti Shrem in Davis, among other smaller institutions doing graphics design projects.
So I didn't say this earlier, but I actually used to work here when I was a Sacramento State student about 5 years ago. And when I came back, oh my goodness, there has been so much development of programs and exhibits. And I know that you have been a huge part in bringing all of that. And so I'm really excited to share with everyone one of the projects that I know you were key in bringing to the public and show it through the Zoom here. Can you tell us a little bit about this project?
So as some of the things that you heard Ty talk about, we are the California State Railroad Museum. Our motto is that our lives are made of railroad stories. And then we tell the stories of the railroad through the stories of people. And as part of that, we're a laboratory of learning and we're a museum as community. And so it's really important for us to work with community partners while we're creating our exhibits to make them happen. And so for the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad that happened on May 10th, 1869, and the anniversary was May 10th, 2019. Thank you. I'm sorry, it's been a busy year. We designed 2 permanent exhibits for the space and work with the Chinese community to help bring those stories out and amplify their voices in our space. So this is one of those exhibits that we worked on. This is our Gold Spike exhibit. And before, it was just a big wall with the Thomas Hill painting on it here. And there was a smaller version of the photograph, the champagne photograph, hung on the wall. And of course, our lost Spike, it's sleeping right now. But as a revamp of the space, we really wanted to tell a more complete picture, give a more complete picture and tell a more complete story about what actually happened on that day, the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. And the way that we wanted to approach it is that we wanted to talk about this concept of history and memory. So what do we remember? How do we remember history? And then what do we remember about that history? So this is a great space to talk about that, especially through the expression of art, because this painting here, Thomas Hill's painting, The Last Spike, was painted 6 years after the actual event occurred and wasn't completed until 6 years after that. So, and if you look at this painting too, the last sports I did actually was about the painting. So you can take a look at that. There are a lot of people in this painting who were not actually at the event, which is really interesting. So we have a conversation about that in this exhibit. We also talk about the photographers that were there on the day, what they were seeing with their cameras, and how they were seeing those and recording those events. And it was really important for us to make sure that we have a conversation in this particular exhibit about the role of the Chinese railroad worker, which was 90% of the transcontinental workforce on the Central Pacific side of the rail line. And it was really important for us to make sure that they had a presence in this particular exhibit talking about this day, because there wasn't a lot of visual record of them at this event, although there's some written documentation. So one of the biggest things that I really love about this exhibit is, well, there's a couple, but first of all is this really big monitor that we have, this screen. And the best part about this is instead of just looking at one static image, you get to look at all of the different images from that were taken on the day of the ceremony. So you get to see in big picture a lot of the detail that you wouldn't see if you were just looking at some of the smaller stuff. The other thing that's really important for our museum is access and inclusion. And one of the things that we did for this exhibit to create that aspect of the museum is to install and design and install this tactile art piece. So this art piece has nodes on it here, and I'm not going to touch them because I'll start talking. But essentially, this is a raised image that the non-sighted community can come and see or feel the painting of The Last Spike. And these nodes here give you audio description. They also talk about the history. And it's in English and Spanish, which is really great. So this is was a really big investment for us, and I really think that it's paid off and also has increased our accessibility and inclusion here at the museum.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I love this space. Yeah, I remember it was just the end of this really long hallway and this one painting, and now there's just so much to look at. I was going to plug your everything you need to know about The Last Spike Ports as well. If you scroll back down through the Ports Home Learning programs, you can find that. And there is a very interesting and a little bit scandalous story of this painting. So I highly recommend checking that out. And Kim, I know there is a lot going on in the education and interpretive world right now. For me, Kim is one of my main people here who is coordinating all of these behind the scenes programs. Can you give us a little sneak peek about what might be coming up this spring in education and interpretation?
Yeah, our interpretation operations team, which makes up more or less our interpretive department, has been working super hard around the clock, and I am so proud of all of the work that everyone has done, including you, Lauren.
Thank you.
So we have a full suite of stuff coming in the spring. So spring 21, we will be doing digital classroom 3 days a week for Horses to Horsepower, which is one of our interpretive programs. We'll be releasing digital activities in our Student Activity Center, as well as some more teachers' resources that our interpretive operations team has put together, and also our intern team put together over this last semester. So that's really exciting. We'll be working with Chico State Visual Anthropology Department to put together our next digital program, which will be Westward Bound. And that will most likely debut in the summertime and in the fall. So we have a lot of interpretive projects coming up because we live in this digital world now, right? For the next while.
Yeah, while, there we go.
And in terms of exhibits, we're really working on redesigning our lobby. So we recently made our floors grind and polish the
Here we
concrete
go.
floors.
Look at that shine.
So
Which, funny note, we were trying to film an interpretive program in here while they were grinding and polishing. So we had a kind of a hectic schedule trying to work around that, but still get the footage in time. It's been an interesting year. but-
yeah, it's definitely been interesting,
Yes.
but fruitful, I think.
Yeah.
I think otherwise we wouldn't have been able to dedicate so much time and energy and effort into really enhancing and improving and building upon really great interpretive programs that have been very successful, and taking those and really like updating some of the content with more current and contemporary research. But also, you know, if we hadn't had this like last 12 months to really look at those things, I don't think we would have been able to do it quite as successfully as we have. So I'm really excited and happy about that. So not
Yeah.
all bad.
Yeah. Some silver linings here. Well, Kim, thank
Yeah.
you so much. One more question for you. What do you like about your job?
My job, because I get to work with some really talented, really amazing people, and I love team development. And it's been a great opportunity for me in my personal career to work with such a great group and to really hone my own skills in helping people create and become better interpreters and create some really great interpretive content. And so that is probably the most fulfilling part for me.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate you joining us. We're going to keep on going as we pan over this amazing exhibit.
You're about to go talk to one of my lead copywriters.
Yes, we are.
Enjoy.
See. Thanks, Kim. And as we're going down around the hallway here, I want to give you a little bit of an insight in this Ports Career Day kind of focuses on either or high-level positions in these jobs of doing this for a while and come in with a lot of education and experience. So Kim is our park interpreter too, but if you are interested in joining interpretation with California State Parks, there's a couple different ways to go about that. Firstly, I am a seasonal employee, so I'm a park interpretive specialist, and that is a part-time job that you can start out with as you're going into interpretation. And then we have our interpreters 1, 2, and 3 in the state park system, which are all exam positions and take some additional experience and education. So that's a little inside look at interpretation. And let me flip you around because this is a really neat exhibit that I know you would rather see. There we go. So we are in our Transcontinental Gallery going along the Governor Stanford locomotive. And hello, just taking in the scene here. And I would like to introduce you all to Debbie. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, everyone.
Could you tell us a little bit about your position here at the Railroad Museum? What does that job do?
Okay. Well, I am a guide 1. My name is Debbie. I'm guide 1 here at the museum. Now, when you hear the word guide, you might think of somebody that leads tours. And in fact, throughout most of state parks, that is what a guide 1 does. We do things a little bit differently here at the museum. And the people who lead the tours here are actually our wonderful docent volunteers. So they lead the tours. And that isn't something that I actually take care of. So you're probably wondering, what is it that I actually do? Well, a guide is also an interpreter. And interpreters study a topic, and then we boil that information down into information that's interesting and easy to understand. So I do that. And then what I do is I write the words. So I'm the person who writes the words that you see on the interpretive panels that we have here. in the museum. I'm standing here in the middle of an exhibit that I researched and wrote. It's about the Chinese railroad workers. And what you see here is the result of several months of research, of reading books, articles, tracking down primary source material. And we actually worked with a Chinese advisory committee. And on the Chinese advisory committee for this exhibit were members of the Chinese community, so that we could understand what it was that they were actually interested in having in an exhibit like this. So those are some of the things that I do. I take all that information, as I said, and then I boil it down to 150 words. And I do that and I write that on an 8th grade level so that it will be interesting to everyone who comes into the museum, who might want to read this and learn. My motivation is to get you to be inspired by what you read here. So maybe after you've left this exhibit, you'd say, gee, I'd like to know more about the Chinese railroad workers. So maybe you'll go to the bookstore where you see that we have several books on the topic, or you'll go to your local library, or you'll buy something online, or maybe you'll want to watch a documentary that goes into more detail. So that's really what motivates me and what I do with all of this. Another thing that I do, I create school programs and I write teachers' manuals. So you can see that I do a lot of research and writing in my job.
And she is also a wonderful public speaker, and we love having her as the face of some of our interpretive programs as well. And Debbie, can you tell us a little bit about your path before becoming a Guide 1 here? I know this is not the first state park that you have worked at, and you have filled more of a traditional guide position elsewhere.
Yes, so I actually have been here at the Railroad Museum for about 5 years. I came here as a park interpretive specialist, and you might have heard about that because several of us start out that way in a seasonal or a part-time position. So I worked as a park interpretive specialist here for a year before I had the opportunity to interview for the full-time position of being a guide. But before that, I did work, as Lauren said, I worked at the California State Capitol with state parks as doing interpretive work. And I also worked at the Center for Sacramento History, which is the city archives, doing interpretive work. So I've done a lot of interpretive work that brought me here.
Yeah. And Debbie, Kim told us a little bit about what we have upcoming this spring with interpretive programs, but do you have any goals or programs that you hope to work on, say, in the next year?
It's been kind of interesting since we've been closed. And we had a 5-year plan to work on exhibits here in the museum. But since the museum's been closed, we had to kind of change path, which I'm sure is what Kim was talking about, working on our digital programming. So I continue to work on digital programming. And what I'm working on now is a new program at the Central Pacific Passenger Station. And we're working on that. It's called Westward Bound, traveling on the Transcontinental Railroad. And I'm writing the teacher's packet for that. So that's currently what I'm working on.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm excited to be a part of that as well. We are in crunch time to get our scripts memorized to get ready for when Chico State arrives. Mm-hmm. And actually earlier, there was a couple of hands that went up when they said they were high school or college students. Do we have any Sacramento State or Chico State students tuning in today? Put the hand up if you are a Chico State or a Sac State student. I am too. Okay, cool. Yeah, a couple of you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, good.
Looks like we got 5. Last thing, Debbie, and maybe we can walk over here so we can show a little bit of the other side of the exhibit. What do you like about your job?
Well, by the way, I just want to say that I graduated from Sac State. I went back later in life. I went back in my 40s to get my degree. So shout out to Sac State. I love my job because I get to immerse myself in history, which is my passion. So I actually get to escape. Should we keep walking? Do you want?
Sure. Yeah, we're headed into the roundhouse. So
I
perfect.
feel like I have the best job in the museum because I actually get to escape to different times. When I wrote about the Chinese workers experience, I got to go back to the 1860s and experience what that was like. I did another exhibit that talked about a train that was stuck in the Sierra in a blizzard. And I got to be on that train stuck with 200 other passengers. And it was really, really cold and scary. So that's what I love my job, because I get to immerse myself in all these stories. And that is what we're about here at the Railroad Museum, is we're all about railroad stories. So
Thank you, Debbie. And at the moment, actually, I believe you are our only Guide 1 position. So, hey, in the future, if you're watching and you think, I'd like to do that, stay tuned, because I know the Railroad Museum will be in need of more guides in the next couple years. Debbie needs a support team here. So thank you so much, Debbie. We're going to keep on going.
All right.
Bye.
bye.
All right, making our way through to our last presenter. And if you've watched other ports programs, you may have noticed this is much smoother. We have upgraded our technology. We now have a gimbal. We got a nice little present in the mail a couple days ago with all kinds of new technology fun. So as we continue making ports programs and digital school programs, our quality is going up here. So this is really fun to walk around with. Hi, Melanie. So our last speaker here, I would like to introduce you to Melanie. Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
Could you please tell us what you do here at the museum and what that position does?
Absolutely. So my name is Melanie Turan, and I am the curator of this museum. As you've seen already, you've walked around. There's lots of railroad equipment, cars, and locomotives. And my job here is to make sure that these are all well cared for, as well as they all have a place to live and to tell their stories.
Nice. And Melanie, what brought you to the curator position?
So I came here, I didn't take the traditional route of getting a formal degree in museum studies. Instead, I went to get a master's in library science and information studies with an emphasis in archives, and that really taught me the value of good data. So, but throughout the last 15 years, I've worked in many museums, big and small, and I've learned that the three museums, libraries, and archives really have, they're all really very similar in that they are all stewards of our collections, of our collective history and our culture.
Nice. Thanks, Melanie. And if you're tuning in, you have a little bit of a different behind the scenes look at a museum. These positions are not at every state parks because we have these cultural resources that we're sharing here. Melanie, would you share with us something that you have worked on, or kind of explain what is some of the day-to-day of taking care of the artifacts and exhibits here?
Yeah, absolutely. So well, what we do here at the California State Railroad Museum is we have an opportunity and a platform to really share these stories that are connected to these objects. These objects can't speak for themselves. So we really are the advocates of their stories, and every object has a part that an experience that has to do with the lives of the people who are connected to it, who were touched by it or influenced by it. So that's really our goal here. So part of my job is to preserve these objects and everything you see around here, so that in a way that we're preserving their stories and these lived experiences. And that's what it all comes down to. So let's walk over to this locomotive right here, and you can see an example of that.
Great. And if you want to learn how this locomotive works, one of the earlier reports we did is how a steam engine works, and it actually features the Sonoma locomotive right here, if you just can't get enough of it in the next 2 minutes here. All right.
So behind us, we have the cylinder here, which is what drives the locomotive. So you have the piston that's housed inside it. And what we've been working on are these cylinder caps right here. So if you kind of come around to this side, you'll see clearly what we've been doing is taking off this kind of sheen. So you see the difference here. You have all these fingerprints, if you can kind of see down there. And just, been much loved by the community. And so we're just kind of taking that back a little bit and giving that a bit of that shine as to what it would have looked like when it was in operation.
Yeah. What was the process for doing that, and how long did it take you?
Well, we're still in progress, and it's not a completed project yet. So it's just a matter of really just taking the cloth and polishing it down.
Yeah. So Melanie, when you are done with this particular project, what are you hoping to work on in the future? Do you have any upcoming goals or projects for exhibits?
Well, part of what a curator does is we serve the memories of all the people who have touched all these objects and been a part of their lives. And what I do is just a small part of that history. And so creating a space for these objects to live in, to tell their stories, as well as to make sure that they have a path forward into the future. So part of that is taking care of physically preserving these objects so that they have, they remain, as well as creating spaces where we can have engagement and community discussions and dialogue about and sharing our own collections within them. So I'm hoping that one day we can have a place, physical, virtual, whatever it is, where it's we'll have this conversation where we can share our collections, as well as invite everybody out there to talk about what you have in your lives, that so objects that tell stories about you.
Thanks, Melanie. And last question for you. What do you like about your job?
Well, one of the things I'm learning is that I'm learning something new every day, from the objects, from the people I work with, from people outside. So it's really a continual process, and that's what keeps the job exciting.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming into the museum today and telling us more about your work. We're going to actually head on up for a little bit of a bird's eye view. Thank you, Melanie. All right, everybody. So heading up the steps to our cab forward, which gives a really nice kind of aerial view of the roundhouse as we close out here. Things are still pretty quiet, but I'm hoping that we can do a career day part 2 coming up at the end of the month. As I said, the jobs that we saw today focus more on career and exam positions, but we have a whole lot more going on in state parks for seasonal and student employees. So next time, if you'd like to tune in, I'm hoping to feature park aides, park interpretive specialists, maintenance, and a ranger. I was hoping to get a ranger today, but they were doing a canine training. So hopefully we can have them join us next time. We also have a lot going on our website, californiarailroad.museum. You can check out more about some of the projects and exhibits that you've heard from our team today. So thank you so much. Keep tuning in to the Ports Home Learning Program. And I'm really appreciative that all of you joined us today. Bye, everybody.